Welcome to another segment of Al Islam Worldwide Ministry Presents. I'm your host, Imam Yahya Abdullah, along with our guest that we will introduce. As always, we like to begin with prayer, but let me make a disclaimer before we start the prayer. If perchance we have rough weather here or some inclement weather in the area of Jacksonville. So if we have any problems with technical connections or difficulties, as we have done in the past, we will record it and then we will post the program later. So you won't miss anything, okay? Welcome, and let's begin with prayer. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Ameen. And I will translate as I always do from Abdullah Yusuf Ali's Quran. With Allah's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. All praise belongs to Allah, the cherisher and sustainer of all the systems of knowledge. The merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer, sole master on the day of judgment. Thee alone do we worship, and thee alone do we seek for aid and assistance. Guide us along the path that is straight, the path of those whom thou hast bestowed thy favors and grace, not the path of those that have earned your displeasure, nor of those who go astray. Ameen. We say to our Christian brothers and sisters, amen. Now that concludes the reading of the Quran. And I want to greet all of you. We say Assalamu alaikum to the Muslims in the United States of America, all of our viewers around the world. And we want to thank you. I want to tell you we're really grateful and appreciative and thankful that so many of you are consistently watching Al Islam Worldwide Ministry. We appreciate all of your kind comments. And we know you have other choices. We know there's so much in social media, on Facebook and on YouTube. You have so many choices. So we thank Allah, and we are humbled that you consistently watch our program. So we greet you all in the United States. Assalamu alaikum. Those of you all who are around the world, particularly you, Junaina in Malaysia, Abdullah, Rahima in Ghana, our friends in Nigeria, Bermuda, U.S. Virgin Islands, Eastern Europe, and so many other places. The UAE now, the UAE, Mexico, and I could just go on naming countries. So we thank all of you all for tuning in to Al Islam Worldwide Ministry. Peace be with you to our Christian brothers and sisters, and shalom to our Jewish brothers and sisters. Tonight, we're continuing with our segment on the Quran and the Constitution. Now, this is our fifth program, or our fifth segment. And I've heard from so many of you that you're really enjoying it by the grace of God. And you don't want us to rush through it. And we're trying to get all of the questions. And by the way, the program is live, or when it's live, you can interact with us with questions. But please send us questions only that we can read on air. No comments. You can comment later in the comments section on Facebook. But if you have any questions, feel free to send the questions to us. So before I begin with our opening statement, I want to introduce my guest, our young adult sitting to my right here, Cam Nelson. Welcome back. Assalamu alaikum. Lazette SALEEM, our regulars. Assalamu alaikum, Lazette. And our young adult, second week back from school, ZARIA. Assalamu alaikum, ZARIA KARRIEM. And TERESA Abdullah, one of our regulars. Assalamu alaikum. And her husband, my friend, Dr. RASHEED Abdullah. Assalamu alaikum. I like that little wavy thing you do for the greeting. That's his specialty. Okay, so thank you all very much. And we're going to try to cover all of your questions tonight. And we will start with those that we didn't get last week. There were 3 questions that we didn't get pertaining to the Constitution and Quran. So we will start with them first tonight, and hopefully we have an opportunity to begin to get all 5 in. So now I want to read the opening statement for tonight from the book we read last week, Thomas Jefferson's Quran, Islam, and the Founders by Denise A. Spellberg. And so tonight I'm going to be reading from the bottom of page 9 of the book, the last paragraph on page 9. And just read, we'll complete this section for our opening statement. So I'm quoting now from the book. Muslim American rights became a theoretical reality early on, but as a practical one, they have been much slower to evolve. In fact, they are being tested daily. Recently, John Esposito, a distinguished historian of Islam in contemporary America, observed, quote, Muslims are led to wonder, what are the limits of this Western pluralism? Thomas Jefferson's Quran documents the origins of such pluralism in the United States in order to illuminate where, when, and how Muslims were first included in American ideals. Until now, most historians have proposed that Muslims represented nothing more than the incarnated antithesis of American values. That means the opposite of, which we're not, and many American values. Yeah, some of them we are. These same voices also insist that Protestant Americans always and uniformly define both the religion of Islam and its practitioners as inherently un-American. Indeed, most historians posit that the emergence of the United States as an ideological and political phenomenon occurred in opposition to 18th century concepts about Islam as a false religion and source of despotic government. There is certainly evidence for these assumptions in early American religious polemic writings, domestic politics, foreign policy, and literary sources. There are, however, also considerable observations about Islam and Muslims that cast both in a more affirmative light, including key references to Muslims as future American citizens in important founding debates about rights. These sources show that American Protestants did not monolithically view Islam as a thoroughly foreign religion. This book documents the counter-assertion that Muslims, far from being definitively un-American, were deeply embedded in the concept of citizenship in the United States since the country's inception. I hope you all are hearing this now. I'm speaking to our viewers out there. That this idea of Muslims being un-American were deeply embedded in the concept of citizenship in the United States since the country's inception. She's saying far from that now, that we were not un-American. Even if these inclusive ideas were not then accepted by the majority of Americans. While focusing on Thomas Jefferson, the founder, one of the founders, while focusing on Jefferson's views of Islam, Muslims, and the Islamic world, it also analyzes the perspectives of John Adams and James Madison. Nor is it limited to these key founders. She's talking about this book. The cast of those who took part in the contest concerning the rights of Muslims, imagined and real, is not confined to famous political elites, but includes Presbyterian and Baptist protesters against Virginia's religious establishment. The Anglican lawyers James Iredell and Samuel Johnston in North Carolina, who argued for the rights of Muslims in their state's constitutional ratifying convention, and John Leland, an evangelical Baptist preacher, an ally of Jefferson and Madison in Virginia, who agitated in Connecticut and Massachusetts in support of Muslim equality, the Constitution, the First Amendment, and the end of established religion at the state level. Last paragraph, we conclude. The lives of two American Muslim slaves of West African origin, Ibrahimi Abdel Rahman and Omar ibn Said, and Omar ibn Said, also intersect this narrative. Both of them, Ibrahimi Abdul Rahman and Omar ibn Sa'id were literate in Arabic. The latter, Omar ibn Sa'id, writing his autobiography in that language. They remind us of the presence of tens of thousands of Muslim slaves who had no rights, no voice, and no hope of American citizenship in the midst of these early discussions about religious and political equality for future free practitioners of Islam. So if you're listening to this, Muslims are no newcomers to the United States. In concluding, she says, imagined Muslims, along with real Jews and Catholics, were the consummate outsiders in much of America's political discourse at the beginning, the founding of this nation. Jews and Catholics would struggle into the 20th century to gain in practice the equal rights assured them in theory, although even this process would not entirely eradicate prejudice against either group. Nevertheless, from among the original triad of religious outsiders in the United States, only Muslims today remain the objects of a substantial civic discourse of derision and marginalization, still being perceived in many quarters as not fully American. This book writes Muslims back into our founding narrative in the hope of clarifying the importance of critical historical precedents at a time when the idea of the Muslim as a citizen is once more hotly contested. End quote. So I hope I didn't bore all of you, and I hope you learned something from this. And God bless you, Miss Denise Spellberg, for having the courage to bring this. I don't know her, so I'm just praying for her in general. God bless this wonderful lady for having the courage and the fortitude to bring forward this powerful information, Thomas Jefferson's Quran. And you can pick it up on Amazon.com. Okay, so tonight we're going to begin. We'll take our questions from our illustrious guests we have here. So, Teresa, you get wa alaikum assalam. You get the first question tonight.
Okay. Comment, a statement, then the question.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the preamble to the Constitution mentions provide for the common defense.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any reference of this idea in the Quran?
Okay. Her question, well, her statement in question, if you didn't hear it, is the preamble, pardon me, and this is my pocket Constitution I keep with me now, and I'm loving this document. The preamble to the Constitution mentions the common defense, and she wanted to know in the preamble, and I'll read it again. We the people of the United States, this is on page 1. We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, this is the preamble to the Constitution, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So that is the preamble to the Constitution. And her question is there any reference to common defense in the Quran? And before I go any further, I do have to acknowledge, and I mentioned it last week, so I don't want to be remiss tonight, this nice booklet that started me along this path, The Quran and the Constitution, by my dear friend, IMAM, scholar Imam Muhammad Abdul-Alim out of Philadelphia, and I want to congratulate him for the work that he put into this powerful document. It started me on this path to do more inquiries into this. Okay, so the question about common defense in the Quran, that's the question that Sister Teresa asked us. And let's see here. In chapter 61, verse 4. And I read, and by the way, this chapter is titled Battle Array. So another way of saying that is the army, the defense force. Yeah, the defensive force. You know, we have the Defense Department, right? Well, that's chapter 61 of the Quran, the Defense Department. And there's another chapter, As-Safat, how the army is arranged in ranks. So the battle array, the Defense Department, that's another way of translating this. The Arabic is As-Saf, the Defense Department, the battle array. And it's for war now. It's for military war, the common defense. So we read from the Defense Department, the chapter of the Defense Department, the battle array, verse 4. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, with God's name, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. Inna Allaha yuhibbu ladhina yuqatiluna fi sabilihi saffan ka'annahum bunyanun marsusun. God the Mighty spoke the truth. Surely or truly Allah, God, loves those who fight in his cause in common defense, as if they were a solid cemented structure that's organized. Now, I've never been in the military, but this is a reference to battalions and how you organize the military on the battlefield. So this is in our Quran. But notice something now. It says here, Fi sabilillah, yuqatiluna fi sabilillah. Those who are fighting and killing in God's cause. Note to our brothers, and unfortunately, Teresa, and those of you all who are here and listening, this can be taken out of context because we have extremists in the Muslim world. They use this verse along with chapter 8 and verse 60 that we referenced, I think it was about a week or so ago. Oh, no, not yet. I think we referenced that before about terror. And they say, well, we're fighting in the cause of God. Well, then you have to read the whole Quran and put these things in a context. Absolutely. Fighting in the cause of God is not killing innocent people. That's not in the cause of God. That's in the cause of the devil. That's in the cause of Satan. Killing children, babies. Prophet Muhammad laid out war etiquettes. Okay, adab for harb. Harb means war. Adab al-harb or adab etiquettes for war. So there are war etiquettes. So while we have the right to self-defense for the nation, common defense for the nation, we have to follow, we being Muslims and Muslim nations and societies, and the Prophet Muhammad said this based on revelation. Most of it, in fact, I would say in the time of the Prophet, and they call those ghazwas, the wars that the Prophet was on, they were defensive in nature, common defense. They were to protect the Muslim society, the new Muslim community in New Medina, or Medina al-Munawwara, I say New Medina, but Medina al-Munawwara, the city that was called Yathrib. So the Prophet didn't have a standing army. This is what I want to get to with this asaf. They were called together when they were needed. When the battle was done, now think about this now from an economic standpoint. The greatest cost of our national budget, the largest expenditure, is for the common defense. The Defense Department budget is the largest. Now we have more than, and someone can fact check me on this, but we have close to, if not right up to it, 800 military bases all over the United States of America. Well, that's not common defense in the United States. Now, I know we have interest, they say, it's economic interest around these countries around the world. Well, we protecting business people, but that's not the common defense of the United States of America. So the business people out, if they wealthy and billionaires, let them get mercenaries, hire mercenaries to protect their industries and their deep. But I'm saying, and I've heard this discussion now by the current leader in the White House saying, why are we the police force for the world? We spend trillions of dollars around the world. Now, he does have a point there that we spend in trillions. And then the argument is, well, we withdrawing and we becoming isolated from the world. Well, when you're $23 trillion in debt, you need to withdraw from something and start looking at your own defense. And it's not just a military defense, it's economic defense. You got to protect your citizens. So we've gone beyond what the founding fathers intended in that preamble about the common defense. They were protecting the 13 colonies and the nation, the growing nation that later became the United States of America. So they were protecting the homeland. We have gone way beyond common defense. But Muhammad the Prophet did not have a standing army. That's important. He didn't have a standing police force. Now, how did they keep crime down? And believe it or not, in Saudi Arabia to this day, now they do have a police force, and they do have a standing army, because they were forced to do that. They had a small army before they were attempted to be invaded by Saddam Hussein. They didn't spend their resources on just building military. Now they've done a lot of that too, and they're feeling the pinch a little bit. But Muhammad the Prophet didn't have a standing army. Someone invaded Medina, he gathered the men together, all right? And sometimes the women would help. They would help with nursing and bringing the supplies and things like that. And then he had everybody, what it constitutes, the preamble here says, common defense. See, Jews in Medina, Christians, and you can find this in the Charter of Liberty. Jews, Christians, Muslims, all fought to protect Medina. And he said, the believers, Muslims, are one with the Jews. So Jews weren't our enemies. They weren't the enemies of Prophet Muhammad in his time. Everybody lived in peace in Medina until treachery started, and that's another topic. That's not the question here. The question is on common defense. So yes, the Quran, chapter 61, a soft battle array, protect the nation. So there are some Muslims now in America. And you do whatever you want, people. I'm not here to tell you that we la ikraha fi din. There's no compulsion in our religion. You do whatever you want to do. But you can't say Muslims shouldn't be in the military in the United States of America. Why not? If we're citizens, I've never been in the military, but I had two brothers, a brother-in-law, a niece, a nephew, and other family members who were in the military, and they were Muslims, with the exception of my niece and my brother-in-law. But my other family members, brothers and nephew, they're Muslims. And they were Muslims when they went in the military, the Navy, the Marines, the Army. Yes. So we live in this nation. We also have a responsibility to defend the nation. Now, we can question these so-called, quote-unquote, unjust wars under the pretense of weapons of mass destruction. And a lot of that was questioned. But we do have rights as citizens and an obligation and duty as citizens of these United States of America. And we have many Muslims in the armed forces, many Muslims in the armed forces. And it's our duty and responsibility, like the Prophet said, we have to also defend our nation. Now, we don't have an outside invader. The nation is being invaded from the inside. And we're happy to hear that the police officers who were, I'm not anti the police now. I'm anti the police shooting innocent African Americans and Mexicans. Anybody innocent, I'm anti that. But we need law enforcement. And I think 5 or 6 of them were shot in Philadelphia. But thank Allah, thank God that they're well. None of them were killed. We thank God for that. And in this instance, the perpetrator, they brought him out. They didn't kill him. African-American brother. They let him come out with his hands up in North Philly. So this one kind of turned out okay. When I say okay, being shot is not okay. But nobody died considering what happened in El Paso. And I'm putting these things in the context. And in Dayton and these unfortunate incidents where people have lost their lives. So we need to look more at defending the inner cities from the people living in the inner cities. Okay? So thank you so much for that question, Teresa. Dr. Rasheed, question number 2.
Yes, I written mine down, and I'd like to read it.
Okay.
Please be to Allah. The preamble to the Constitution mentions promote general welfare, you spoke on that a little bit, and security, the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our prosperity. Is there any reference to these ideas in the Quran?
Okay. And you all can tell we're still on the preamble now. The program tonight, part 5, the Holy Quran, the Constitution. So we're on the preamble. So Dr. Rasheed's question is regarding promoting the general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. Is there reference to this in the Quran? Now, something just came to my mind. I can't resist. I can't resist because I see this word here, this statement, blessings of liberty. And you know what came to my mind.
Absolutely.
Well, these are some nice sounding words. And they're beautiful words written by the founding fathers who were denying people the blessings of liberty while they were writing it. Let's be honest about the history of America. And look, it's 2019. We're in the 21st century. This was the 18th century. So 300 years, 3 centuries later, this issue still has not been resolved. The original sin and original stain on America's soul and conscience of slavery and racism and all of that. And they still discussing it now. And so here we have in this beautiful founding document, the blessings of liberty. Oh, it sounds wonderful. But the people who were writing it were denying human beings the blessings of liberty. And they sure wasn't looking out for their general welfare.
As if they didn't understand it.
As if they didn't understand it. And they sure didn't protect the liberty for themselves and posterity. Well, they must have been talking about themselves, because they sure weren't talking about us. But we're here now, so let's we're here now, so but we can't omit these things. And remember, I mentioned last week, this is what? The 400th year that they want to document now. So some historians have said, well, wait a minute, this slavery thing started in 1520, and then even with the indentured servitude, and then actually chattel property around 1565 and 1611. So there are some earlier dates, but the most common date is 1619 when the slave ship showed up in Jamestown, Virginia. See? So they date it from there. So that's where we get the 400 years. Okay, so let's see Dr. Rasheed's question about general welfare, secure the blessings of liberty for ourselves and our posterity. So I'm going, Dr. Rasheed, to chapter 66 in our viewers. Chapter 66, verse 6. Ya ayyuhalladhina aminu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum naran waquduha an-nasu wal hijara. And I'll stop there. All you who believe, save yourselves. This is general welfare.
Yes.
And your families, posterity, from a fire, from punishment, whose fuel, now this is symbolic language, I don't have time to explain this symbolic language, for whose fuel is men and stones. Okay? So God tells us here, yes, save yourself, work for the general welfare of yourself first. Yes. And secure the blessings of liberty for yourself, ourselves, and for what? Your families, your posterity to come. So yes, we have a reference to this in chapter 66, verse 6. Let's see. I think I had something else here for you, Rasheed. I believe I had something else for you, my friend. I wanted to make another connection. What time is it? Well, I'm gonna pass on that one. Let's see. Well, no, it's right here. Okay, so I'm gonna read this, and I'll read it in English because it's long. Okay, but securing posterity, the blessings of liberty. It is not righteousness that you turn your faces, you know this chapter, 2:177, that you turn your faces towards the east or the west. But it is righteousness to believe in God and the future, see, and the angels, and the scriptures, and the messengers, to spend of your resources out of love for him, securing the blessings for ourselves and posterity, blessings of liberty. Spend of your resources out of love for God for your kinfolk, relatives, generations to come. Isn't that the posterity, the children that coming down the line?
That's right.
For the orphans, those who are orphaned, don't have parents, and we have orphanages in these United States of America. For the needy. Now, these are social services programs, see, that I'm reading here, right?
That's right.
So, I remember hearing IMAM Muhammad say one time, he said, yeah, we believe in capitalism, but with a touch of Islamic socialism. So this is Islamic socialism.
That's right.
But it's in the preamble.
Absolutely.
Secure that, the general welfare. And what do they call these social services? They have a name for it, don't they? They call it what? What's that term? Welfare.
Absolutely.
Welfare. Now, unfortunately, in the poor communities, welfare has been used, and I used to say, well, turn the word around and say farewell. But you're not supposed to stay on it forever.
Right.
At a certain point, welfare should become farewell. Once you are faring well, you can say farewell to welfare. But you shouldn't stay on welfare forever. So the founding fathers now wrote that in the preamble. The general welfare. So isn't that socialism?
Absolutely.
Yes. By another name. I mean, I'm understanding what general welfare is. You look out for the seniors. You look out for the poor. You look out for the orphans. You look out for those who can't help themselves.
Absolutely.
All right? That's the Quran.
Make one statement.
Sure.
There's an amendment. And that amendment indicates, it says that,
Speak up so they can hear you, my
oh,
friend.
it's amendment. And that amendment indicates that a particular people was looked upon as being 3/5 human.
Yes.
So wouldn't they be ostracized?
Well, we don't have to say the particular people. It was us.
Yes.
Yeah, they call it the 3/5 compromise.
Yes.
Right.
So to be ostracized from these privileges.
Yeah, well, actually, I did some research on that. He's talking about the 3/5 compromise, where the southern states, for taxation purposes and representation purposes, the slaves, for every 5 slaves that they had, they only counted 3/5 and not the whole 5. Now, when they wanted to reduce their tax burden, then they used the whole 5. See, when they want to represent, they say we can't count. So those in the north say we can't count all those slaves you got. Y'all would outnumber us. So they say, well, for the sakes of the purposes of represent, and I'm paraphrasing some of this right now. For the sake of representation, for counting now, they only classified 3/5 of the 5 slaves. So for every 5 slaves, the South could only be credited a plantation. Well, you could only be credited 3 of them. All right? But if you wanted to write down taxes and all that, then you include the whole 5. So we were collateral. We were whatever they wanted us to be, however they wanted us to leverage us. Remember, we were property.
I understand.
Our people were property. Now, it's kind of hard to fathom that, but we were property. We were collateral. We were currency.
Yeah. So this amendment, is it a privilege? I mean,
well, it was a privilege for the slave states. So that doesn't exist anymore now. Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. But back there for that purpose, it did exist. And some people, they said, well, we were only classified as 3/5 as a human being. Well, I don't even think they give us that much value. 3/5. No, we were subhuman. They classified our people as subhuman.
That's right.
So 3/5 would have been an achievement. Yeah. Progress. But we weren't even classified that as human beings because you don't treat human beings like that.
That's right.
Yeah, they treated us as brute animals, and what they did is just atrocious, and it can never be forgotten now. And we're not. Let me be clear here now. We're not blaming or accusing or attributing any fault to anyone living today. Let's be clear about that. So I'm not of the mindset that every European American is like, you have nothing to do with slavery. You're 25 years old. What did you have to do with slavery? No more than we were slaves. We weren't slaves. None of us here were ever on a plantation. My mother, thank God, was not on a plantation. My father, but there are still some people living. I know I have a friend in Dallas that I just visited, and he's in his 70s. But he was actually on a slave plantation in Mississippi, Nacogdoches, Mississippi. Now, he's the only person I've met that's living that was actually a slave on a slave plantation, and he's still living in 2019. He was a little boy. So that tell us what? That tell us a whole lot now. that they didn't listen to the 13th Amendment freeing slaves now in 1865, because he's not 100 years old. So if I say he's in his 70s and he grew up on a slave plantation back up in the backwoods of Mississippi in the Delta, that says a whole lot. That says they still had slaves, still worked them. They still worked them back there, because how could you get the message to them?
Absolutely.
See? And so they celebrate Juneteenth, June 19th, in Texas now, and other places, Kansas and other places, because it was 2 years later. Because when I first went to Texas in 1982, I never heard of Juneteenth in Jacksonville, Florida, till I got there. And they said, well, this is the day we celebrate because it was 2 years later before the news ever got to the slaves. So what they do, walk it down here to you all or something? They didn't get it. So my friend in his 70s, though, that I saw this past weekend when I was in Dallas, he told me about his experiences on a slave plantation. And I said to him, how could you have been on a slave plantation? You're not 100-something years old. He said, Imam, do you think that they got rid of all those plantations when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed and it became law? He said, nobody came back up in those woods to check on those plantation owners. He said, so I grew up picking cotton in the Delta, Mississippi. Yeah. So, but now you all who are alive today, unless you're one of those exceptional human beings that survived and you still around here and you should be a slave owner, but that's hardly nobody. Most of them have gone and met their judgment with God. So we're not blaming and accusing any of you all. We just take the same attitudes that the Jews do. They never forgot what happened to them in the Holocaust, and they shouldn't forget it. And so we should never forget the Holocaust. Well, that's what I call it, the Holocaust. So yes, the posterity blessings. Let's finish this chapter.
Okay.
Just the social service programs we're talking about, general welfare.
Right.
To spend out of your substance, chapter 2, verse 177. Out of love for God, for the kith and the kin, the relatives, for the orphans, for the needy, for the travelers, the wayfarers, for those who ask, for the ransom of slaves. That's right here now, freeing slaves. So God said, no, this is righteousness, to work on behalf of freeing slaves. Goes back to the question Cam asked last week about the abolishment of slavery. Here's another verse, chapter 2, 177. So they say Islam supports slavery. Really? Well, God told Prophet Muhammad, spend resources to free the slaves.
That's right.
This 1,400 years ago, before there was ever any African American in America in chattel slavery, God revealed to him righteousness is freeing the slaves. To be steadfast in prayer, practice regular charity, fulfill your contractual obligations, which you have entered into, to be firm and patient of suffering and hardship, and throughout all periods of fear and panic, such are the people of truth, the people who are really God conscious. So this verse, Dr. Rasheed, address in a broad context, general welfare, securing the blessings of liberty for ourselves and posterity. Okay?
We need to share it with them.
Yes. Thank you all very much for listening to this. I know it was a long reading of it, but like I said, when I started this, it's very difficult to just rush through these things. All right. So, Sister Lizette, you get the next question. We're doing good. We answered the question.
Okay. In light of gun control and what's happening today, there is much discussion about the Second Amendment
Yes.
to the Constitution regarding the right to bear arms. Does the Quran say anything about the right to bear arms?
Okay, now this is a big one, but we will just answer it in a snapshot, hopefully, and I hope we can address it. And her question is about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms. Now, you know what's interesting about this now? And like I said, I'm enjoying reading the Constitution. So I'm going to read this. I'm going to read the Second Amendment. And now you listen to this, and then I'm gonna ask you what you hear when I read the Second Amendment. And those of y'all who listen. See, and a lot of times we assume things. We don't go and research it, right? So I'm reading the Second Amendment, and I'm saying, well, the Second Amendment is not what I'm hearing in the media. And it's in the Constitution. So let's read the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia. Common defense in the preamble you just asked about. What's a militia? An army, the National Guard, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force. What other branch of the service we have? I named the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, Marines, and so forth. The National Guard. This is a well-regulated militia. Not every Tom, Dick, and Harry and Joe Blow. That's not what this is saying. So I read it. I said, wait. And I looked up militia. And I'm like, well, they were talking about the founding fathers was talking about an army. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Back to the preamble about common defense. So this is an army. This is the armed forces. And what does it say? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So all of this started, and we have to put these things in a context. Now we all have the right to bear arms. And I'm glad we have the right to bear arms nowadays, because there's 393 million guns in the United States of America. And I was talking about how glad we are that nobody was killed in this incident in Philadelphia, but the man had a high-powered assault rifle. So the founding fathers, and I imagine them now. This is my imagination, and this is me. I'm entitled to have my own imagination. Everybody else is entitled to their own. And I'm telling you, it's my imagination. I'm imagining the founding fathers in 2019 America. Jefferson, Madison, Ben Franklin, George Washington, all the founding fathers, sitting here in America in 2019, looking at what we're looking at, saying, have they read the Second Amendment? This is my imagination. That if they could somehow or another come back, say, hey, you people, aren't you reading what's in the Constitution? We were being attacked from Britain, from Great Britain, and we needed to defend our shores. So we had to organize a militia to defend against Britain coming to the 13 colonies. So every citizen that was there, say the citizens said, take up arms. Take up arms to do what? What Teresa asked about first, the common defense. Defend the colonies. Defend the country, the new land. So they had to call everybody. Come on, just like Prophet Muhammad did.
British are coming.
British are coming. That's it. I was looking for
Paul
that.
Revere.
Paul Revere riding through the town. The British are coming. The British are coming. Now you ride through the town. I hate to say it like this. Here come Ray Ray. Here come David from the White Nationalist Party. Man, no British, nobody invading this country. The people are under siege by the white nationalist supremacists. by the criminals running loose. Everybody, I got the right to have a weapon. Well, you should read the Constitution. Now, I get it, the right to bear arms, but and they're talking about it now, banning assault weapons. And you asked me about the Quran, so I'm gonna read that right quick. And I just looked at the time, so I kind of figured y'all two wouldn't get you all in. So let's read from the Quran right quick, because that was your question. Is there any support for the Second Amendment in the Quran? Chapter 8, verse 60. Start with 69, Lazette. Let not the unfaithful or the enemies, unbelievers, think that they can get the better of the righteous. They will never frustrate them.
That's right.
Against them. Now, this is the Second Amendment now. Remember, Thomas Jefferson read the Quran before the Constitution and before the Second Amendment. Against them make ready your strength to the utmost of your power. Now, this is in chapter Al-Anfal, the spoils of war. This is the context this is in now, for war. And I mentioned earlier about Islam and war ethics and war etiquettes. Make ready against them to your utmost power, including steeds of war. And back in those days, it was what? Steeds, horses, camels, whatever. Now you got tanks. To strike terror to the ibun bihi. Strike terror into the hearts of the enemies. Now, you critics who are out there, and I've responded to this when I was in Dallas, Texas, online before, that say, yeah, see, the Quran told them to terrorize us. No, it does not. It is talking about war. When you're on a battlefield with enemies. Strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of God and your enemies and others besides, whom you may not know, but whom God does know. Whatever you spend in the cause of God shall be repaid unto you, and you shall not be treated unjustly. Now, as I conclude this, if the enemy inclines towards peace, now our critics never read verse 61, then thou also incline towards peace, and trust in God, for he is the one that hears and knows all things. And by the way, Sister Lazette, chapter 57 of the Quran is titled, in our views, Al-Hadid. Iron. And God says we send the iron down for mighty war and for other usages. Okay? So thank you all very much, and we thank you for joining us. Another segment of Al-Islam Worldwide Ministry Presents, and we will finish this up, inshallah, God willing, next week. So join us, same time, 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Al-Islam Worldwide Ministry. Please visit our website, www.alislamworldwideministry.com. Go to our donate button. If you want to make a contribution, you can donate online. If you would like to mail in a contribution, it's P.O. Box 3024, Jacksonville, Florida, 32206. Join us for prayer tomorrow, Jummah prayer, Friday prayer, on Masjid Muhammad in Jacksonville, Florida, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'd like to conclude. Before that, we this program and the programs for last week is posted up on our YouTube channel. And we have a channel called Al-Islam Worldwide Ministry. So you can actually go on your TV, your smart TVs, and you can watch the program on TV. So let us conclude with prayer. Rabbina atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban nar. Our Lord, grant us the best that this world has to offer us, the best that the next life has to offer us, and save us from the punishment of the fires of sins. Ameen. Thank you all very much. We want to say to all of our viewers, Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with you. Shalom.